evening and welcome to episode 209 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I am your proud host, Howard Kravitz. Thank you very much for joining us on a very special podcast I've been waiting for a long time with two fantastic guests. We are expecting a big live audience tonight, so please make sure you do a few things for us. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. That'll tell YouTube this is a fantastic podcast and will bring horse players to our show. We'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe if you've not done that already. Then smash that notification bell, which will tell you when our new content will arise, so you don't have to jump onto YouTube all the time. And then also we'd really appreciate if you smashed that like button, that thumbs up button. Again, that will send people to the podcast. You can see my name tag on the bottom of the screen. At H Kravitz is my Twitter handle. Please follow there. And also on the bottom of the screen on the scroll, hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. Please feel free to email with any questions, comments, or concerns. You can also listen to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor. Check us out there as well. We have Power Picks. It's basically a tip sheet. It's been excellent overall. ROI is close to $2.50. As you can see on the bottom of the screen, it costs $16 a month. That's it. It's only $4 every weekend. We give spot plays, price plays. Most of you know already if you've been following the show. It's through Patreon. Highly recommend you check it out. It's been very profitable. Patreon.com right there. And then, of course, we have a fantastic website also, hhhracingpodcast.com, where you can find out more about the show. All right, so let me bring on my co-host. The plan here tonight, just for everyone knows, is we're going to have a mystery guest, a TV personality. Don't want to say who, but this person will be on very shortly. And I know that our co-hosts don't even know who it is also. So this person will be on in a few minutes. And then approximately 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, we will have one of the best trainers in the world, Mr. Chad Brown, will be on the show here live to talk to us and answer questions as well. So we're very excited about all that. So before we bring on our mystery guests, let me bring on some people who are mysterious, but they're also my co-hosts. First of all, from the Saratoga Special, Mr. Paul Halloran. From the East Coast of Maryland, Pete Visco. And my good friend from Arlington, from right in the Chicago area, Mr. Kyle Roscoe. Guys, how are we doing tonight?
What's happening?
Excellent.
Doing well. Is it as warm out east as it is here? It's like, I think this is our last warm weather day, guys, in Chicago. It's like 55 here today, but it's supposed to get very cold soon. Pete and Paul?
It's not too bad here. I mean,
it was good here. Yeah, high 40s today, maybe 50.
All right. Well, that's not too bad.
Good Paul's where you get the real cold. Oh. Paul, the real cold comes up there, Paul. Huh?
Could be worse.
I hate it.
Me too.
Paul, just let everyone know. Why don't you tell people where you are, because we don't have perfect, Wi-Fi with you tonight because you're not at home. So you want to just tell people what's going on with you tonight.
Yeah, I'm coming to you live from the campus of Northern Essex Community College in Haverhill, Massachusetts, about 25 miles north of Boston. I just got off the court adjudicating a junior college basketball game. They were nice enough to give me a little office space up here. I told them I had a very important engagement at 8 o'clock.
Terrific. Well, we appreciate you being on, and we apologize for the little delay there with Paul, but everything should be fine. Guys, I wanted to say something very briefly before we get started. Let me change the background here. And I also wanted to put up something on this screen here, put up our banner, our logo there on the screen. There we go, next to Pete. I want to say something to our audience. I want to make this just very clear to everyone. I also put it on our chat. We would very much appreciate if you're going to have any comments in the live chat tonight. You keep them to horse racing, and you be respectful. That's the only thing we ask. Be respectful, and keep the questions to horse racing. Realize that we're very excited to have our guests on tonight, but we also want to make sure that we're all respectful. I could have easily ladies and gentlemen out there that are watching right now and who will listen later, I could have very easily done this as a tape show with no ability to ask questions of our wonderful guests tonight. I didn't want to do that. Anyone knows the character of anyone on the screen right now knows what we're about. So I just appreciate everyone being on the show and listening and watching tonight. But please make sure your comments are respectful and about horse racing. Otherwise, we will delete them and we will block you from that. And we really don't want to do that. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me take the banner down. Without further ado, our mystery guest, if you can hear me, get a little thumbs up, mystery guest in the background there. Wonderful. This person is ready. I know everyone on this show, and just so our mystery guest knows in the background, only myself, I'm the only one that knows this person is about to come on our show. So our co-hosts are very excited. They're waiting. Who is it going to be? Ladies and gentlemen, from NBC Sports, Miss Brittany Erden. Brittany, how you doing tonight?
That was quite the lead-in. I feel like there's going to be a serious sense of disappointment of who the mystery guest was. But thank you so much for having me.
Brittany, not at all. We are all very big fans. We really appreciate you coming on the show. And I know there's one person for sure, and he's in the top right-hand corner there. That is by far your biggest fan. Paul, you asked me to get Brittany on the show. She's a hard person to get on, but we finally were able to do it. Paul, that's my early Christmas gift for you, sir. There you go.
I just hope this is. I just hope this doesn't hurt her career. Her career has been going tremendous thus far. So hopefully, Brittany, this will not bring you down. Welcome.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. I know that some of my colleagues have been on the show as well, and their careers seem just fine. So we'll be good.
I think so. Well, Brittany, we know you're very busy. We really appreciate you being on the show. Before we get to our very popular segment called 10 Minutes to Post, which is 10 fun questions, might be horse racing, might be not. A lot of people sort of have the feeling that the racing season is over now with the Breeders' Cup and Thanksgiving weekend, but not at all. This is a big weekend coming up in New York and at Del Mar for the Turf Festival. And then also, of course, we have opening day at Santa Anita at the end of December with the Malibu. Can you tell everyone, where we can see you on TV and talk a little bit about the races coming up the rest of 2022? Because horse racing is not done at all by any means this year.
No, my schedule surely says that racing is not done. It's year round, right? We obviously have the highlights where you got the spring season with the Triple Crown races, and then you've got all the Breeders' Cup Challenge Series races in lead up to the World Championships. But no, we've got Del Mar Fall Meet, which is, for anybody that hasn't been to the Bing Crosby meeting, it's so much fun. It's completely different than the chaos and craziness of the summer meeting. So we have the Turf Festival, as you mentioned. Hollywood Park, RIP, we definitely miss it. It's sad to have lost one of my favorite racetracks that I kind of grew up at, but Del Mar has taken over a lot of those stakes races, which is fantastic. So they pay homage to those. And David Jerkins, the racing secretary at Del Mar, was telling me that because we're going a week later, normally we would wrap up Thanksgiving weekend, but we're going one more weekend into December. He said, let's split up the Turf Festival, have people enjoy another week. So we've got not just one, but two Grade 1 races coming up from Del Mar this weekend, and then opening day at Santa Anita. I mean, it's Christmas the day after Christmas. Boxing Day, as the
I believe so. Brittany, I'm from the Chicago area. I've only been to Santa Anita once, but I will be there next year for the Breeders' Cup. And the one time I was there was on opening day for the Malibu, but it was a few years ago. And you might recall there was some horrible weather a few days before, and they actually had to push it back a few days. I think it was 2019. Correct me if I'm wrong, but so that was sort of a strange scenario. I don't know if you recall that situation, but there was like some snow in the San Gabriels. It was pretty crazy.
We are not used to weather in Southern California. So any sort of speck of rain that comes down, we don't know how we lose our minds. But same thing happened at Del Mar over Thanksgiving. They saw the forecast and we were going to have to cancel racing. They pushed it back. So fingers crossed we don't have to do that again. We've been pretty lucky to have some really beautiful, crisp weather out here. If rain is going to come, let's just have it be not on a race day.
Oh, for sure. Let's keep the rain away. Del Mar is beautiful. I was there for the first time for the Breeders' Cup last year. So I love California racing, and we really appreciate you having on. Brady, let's jump right to 10 minutes to post, because I know we have a short time with you. And again, it's more rapid fire. If you want to answer in 5 seconds, a minute, it's really up to you. So expound as much as you like. And I do have even a little feature for it. Here we go. It is 10 minutes to post. 10 minutes to post. All right, Brittany, here we go. We're going to alternate.
So nervous.
Oh no, you'll just be fine. Everyone handle these questions just fine. These are all coming from myself. However, what we're going to do, Brittany, is each of our co-hosts will alternate answering a question, and Pete, Paul, and Kyle will just go, in clockwise. So Pete, you'll be second. First question, Brittany, are you ready for 10 minutes to post?
We'll find out.
All right, here we go. Questions are going to be on the bottom of the screen as well, Brittany. What was the first moment you fell in love with horse racing?
Oh my gosh. Probably when I was 5 years old, and it's the first memory I have of actually going back to the barn. You fall in love with the horses, in my opinion, before you fall in love with the racing aspect of it. So I grew up at the track. How could you not fall in love? So the first moment I went to the barn.
Perfect. I think that's a great answer. Pete, you've got the second one. It's a bit open-ended. I'd like to see where Brittany's going to go with this one.
Hey, Brittany. Ooh, Santa Anita or Del Mar? That's a tough one.
It's a really tough question. And if I pick one, my friends that work for the other companies are going to be mad, but Del Mar, don't hate me, Santa Anita. Santa Anita's home for me, but there's something really special about Del Mar where the turf meets the surf. It's a boutique meeting. So it's a dead heat almost. Let's say Del Mar by a nostril.
I don't know how my other co-hosts feel on this show. The two most beautiful racetracks I've been to in the United States. Just walking out and seeing the San Gabriel Mountains at Santa Anita for the first time, Brittany, I almost shed a tear, literally. And of course, Del Mar, you got the ocean roll. I mean, it's just two fantastic venues. You can't go wrong with either one, right?
No, it's tough to pick. And actually, I had the opportunity of going to Sha Tin in Hong Kong, and they basically based their entire track and facility off of Santa Anita with the mountains in the background. So it's a gorgeous place. It's a great race place for a reason.
For sure. Paul, you got the next question, sir.
Let's see.
Yeah, Brittany, I would just tell you, I like Del Mar so much. On my annual junkets to Las Vegas, I used to fly over just for a day. I'd fly over, get a car, go to the track, and be back in Vegas at night. So it's the second greatest track. I'm a Saratoga guy. I'm an East Coast guy. But your favorite track to attend as a fan, your favorite track to attend outside of California as a fan?
I'd have to say Keeneland. It's horse country. There's something real. I mean, everybody in the surrounding area loves horse racing. You walk into Tony's or Dudley's and they've got horse racing on the TV. So it's just the area that it's in. You're in horse country. You can go to the farms and everyone is so darn nice, right? And it's pristine. So I would say Keeneland would probably be my favorite track outside of California.
Brittany, anyone that's been to the Lexington airport knows this story, and I'll be brief. I fell in love with Lexington and Keeneland the second I landed, because when you go to the airport, I was waiting for my luggage, and then all of a sudden, I hear call to post. I hear da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, what in the world is that? And then the luggage comes out on the carousel. Love it. Whoever thought about that at the Lexington airport, great idea.
You felt like you were at home, right?
It was awesome. Kyle Roscoe, you have the next question.
Completely. So, Brittany, what's a bucket list track or a race day event that you never attended and you would like to?
This one's easy for me. Australia. I've never been. We started covering it and I started following it a lot more when Winx was on her insane win streak. And Mike Joyce, my coworker, had the opportunity of going to Australia, Royal Randwick, etc. So Australia, and I would probably pick, you got to go to the Melbourne Cup, right? I mean, that's on the list. I've been to Royal Ascot, which I love. That would probably be my favorite event, but let's go Melbourne Cup because I've never been.
A lot of people, Matt Bernier, many people have given that answer, Brady. That's been a very popular answer. I hear they like to have a few beverages there as well. So maybe not your beverage of choice, but I know they like to drink there during that day as well. My next question, Brittany, is from me. The most exciting race you've witnessed in person, but sorry, I have to exclude Storm the Court and the BC Juvenile.
Well, then I'm going to keep it within the Breeders' Cup family. Yes, everyone witnessed my reaction to that win. Nobody witnessed my reaction to my dad's first Breeders' Cup win. And that one was very special because growing up, my dad started in the claiming ranks and you never really thought that you were going to have that opportunity, let alone win. And so it was 2016 and Champagne Room was 33-1 in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. and I wasn't working. I was standing right next to my dad, and it was the first time I think I heard him screaming louder than I did. Come on, girl. So that was really, really special because it was a moment that took my dad's career to another level. And as I'm sure people all know, I'm his biggest fan. So that was my most exciting race, aside from Storm.
Say hi to your father for us. He does a great job as a trainer, and perhaps we'll have a chance to have him on it at some point as well. Pete, you have the next question.
Oh, all right. Favorite betting angle.
I know this.
We need this one. We need a couple of them on this show, Britt. So give us some good one.
I think I know this, Brittany, but because you're already chuckling. But go ahead. A lot of people don't know what you're going to say.
First time gelding.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, honestly, I think Andy, if anybody's been watching FanDuel or TVG lately, Andy B. and Cohn talks a lot about first-time geldings. But for whatever reason,
that was great.
Yeah, so good.
I heard it. That was great.
She rendered Mike Joy speechless. And Gabby as well. But I think you see a massive form reversal. And I've heard my dad talk about it a lot of time. If either a horse is holding too much weight or they're obviously mentally not really there, you can see a horse run last in their most recent event and then win the next event. So it doesn't always work. I had a couple people at the track at Del Mar say that they keep betting the first time gelding angle and it wasn't winning that day. Well, okay, it's not always going to work, but I'd have to say that one. And I say it with a chuckle.
We have many people who are commenting positively. Just want people who are watching. We'll try to get some of your questions if we have time at the end. We have 4 more questions. Brittany, as our 10 minutes to post, and this one goes for Paul.
Who are you most nervous or anxious to interview live on air? This is a good question.
This is a really good question. This is a tough question. In the industry or outside of the industry?
Either one, but maybe before you answer your question, Brittany,
I would say
talk about some of the
either, but yeah.
You can talk about some of the most famous people you've interviewed, however you like to answer it.
Okay. I try to put a lot of work into whoever I'm interviewing, so I do feel prepared, but sometimes you stumble upon someone, you don't know who's going to be there. I'll say a recent one. For those of you that don't know the Cody's Wish story, it was a really beautiful story about a young boy named Cody Dorman who was born with a very rare disorder, and he had this incredible bond with a horse named eventually Cody's Wish. And I knew that I was doing the Winner's Circle presentation for that race. And I just wanted to make sure that I did it justice. So I was really, really nervous if Cody's Wish won, what was the appropriate way of handling that Winner's Circle presentation, being able to give Cody his moment because this horse means so much to him. It means so much to the family, just handling it the right way. And I think from, the analysts that we had on the desk, from the interviews that were done in the Winner's Circle, I hope that everyone really got a sense of what this inexplicable bond is between horse and human. So that I was very, very nervous for. But from a celebrity standpoint, I was supposed to interview David Beckham at the Pegasus. It was, I think, the 2nd or 3rd year that the Pegasus was happening. I did so much research. He was just getting into MLS ownership stateside, and I wanted to be prepared. I waited on the blue carpet for a good 2 hours. Never showed up.
That's the way it goes sometimes.
It's one of those things. And I'll give you a last one in the industry. And this is funny because I'm good friends with his daughter. Richard Mandela terrifies me every time I have to interview him.
Very dry sense of humor.
Yeah.
For sure. Paul, do you want to tell Brittany your relationship with the Dormans very, very briefly?
I covered the 4-year-old Brittany at Saratoga, and that was the way, the story was out, but it still wasn't on the level it was. And I had a few days, so I was able to connect with the father. And actually, and I know Gabby did a great interview with him during the workout. I was able to have I sent the father a few questions, and, he sent me a video of Cody answering on his tablet, and sent him a Saratoga special hat to wear. And, and as I say, that was before it was kind of a big story. And then, of course, the Breeders' Cup took it to a new level. But I'll tell you, how could you have a dry eye at that one? It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Every time that story is brought up, it gives me chills because for those of us that are in the industry know how powerful horses can be to the soul. I know that sounds cheesy, but they really, you witnessed it right there. So I hope that, the rest of America can jump on the Cody's Wish bandwagon and get to hear the story too.
Vote for Cody's Wish and for the Vox Populi Award. I strongly urge everyone to do that. If there's ever a horse deserving, Brittany, it's got to be that one for that particular award. We have 3 more questions. This one goes to you, Kyle.
All right. Well, which on-air talent gave you the best advice early in your career? And if you remember it, what was it?
So I actually used to call Mike Joyce Yoda, and I was his Padawan learner. So when I started at TVG, he was kind of put to the task of training me essentially. And so I shadowed him, carried his iPad. I would go through the entire form, tell him which questions I was going to ask when I was down at Los Alamitos first reporting. And it wasn't one thing in particular. He loves to say that he didn't say anything nice to me for the first couple of years. So maybe that helped. But no, he was always just directing me in the right way. And I appreciate how tough he was on me, because I think that that's the only way that you get better. Lafitte Pinkai has always been a huge, huge support of mine, and Nick Luck. So I've been really lucky to work with a lot of incredible people.
Incredible. And coincidentally, Mike Joyce will be making a very small appearance on our show on Thursday, Brittany.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and I met him at the Breeders' Cup, and I didn't meet you at the Breeders' Cup, but I was 5 feet from Matt Miller, my good friend Matt Miller, who talked to you a little bit on the apron. I don't know
right before the Breeders' Cup sprint. He's like, "Can you do a podcast?" I'm like, "No, not right now."
That was funny. By the way, you were wearing a very appropriate, lovely purple dress, if I believe, for the Breeders' Cup as well, correct? Do I remember that correctly? All right. 2 more questions, Brittany. This one's for me. Favorite horse in your father's barn right now, and why? And obviously, it doesn't have to be the most talented. Maybe it's just the friendliest, the most gentle. Who's the favorite horse in the Urton barn right now?
My favorite usually aren't the most talented in the barn. I have a feeling that the more talented ones have a bit of an edge. They're not the sweethearts that just want to cuddle with you, unless you're American Pharoah, I guess. Right now, I would say it's a horse named We Miss Grammy. She actually, for whatever reason, the light has turned on. She just ran second by a nose at Del Mar recently, and finally broke her maiden 2 starts back. But that aside, she is the sweetest horse you will ever meet. You can go up to the stall and she'll just put your head right in there, nuzzle you, and then you'll walk away, and she paws because she wants the attention. She starts scraping. But she's a cutie.
How often do you have a chance to go to the barn? How involved are you in the barn?
Not as much as I would like to be honest. That's my favorite place. If I could do morning shifts every day and just spend time, on the backside getting to hang out with the horses, I would love that. That would be ideal. But sure. Obviously, much of what I do is in the studios or it's down at the track. So I try to pop over as much as I can, but not as much as I would like to.
Understood. Pete, we have the last question for the wonderfully talented Brittany Urton. Go ahead, Pete.
All right. Future professional goals and aspirations. Wow, that's a deep one for you, Brittany.
That is a deep one for me. Well, I am a massive sports fan. So, my goal would be to cover all sports. I love baseball, diehard Dodgers fan over here. So if I was given the opportunity to cover other sports, that would be huge for me. I used to want to be an actress when I was younger. It's so funny. And now I find I'd rather ask people the questions and have to, take over and become this other role. So if I could work in other sports, host a show, just continually get to work with interesting people that make me better each day. I love stories. So if I get to ask questions, whether it's on camera or off, doesn't matter to me, to get to hear and share people's stories, that's really all I want to do.
Brittany, we really appreciate your time. Paul, I know you've waited a long time. You've been asking for months to get Brittany on. Paul, I'll let you have the last word or comment for Brittany Urton.
Paul's going to be let down.
I just want to know, Brittany, if that's your goal, what the hell are the networks waiting for? There seems to be a communication gap here. So that has to happen. We'll get on that.
Whatever you guys can do. No, there's so many really talented men and women out there. It's a tough gig. It's not like it's
Matt Miller is apologizing, by the way, at the bottom of the screen, Brittany. Sorry.
Matt, don't worry about it. It's a joke now. But no, it's I don't want to say it's a saturated environment. It's just a very competitive one. So have to keep working hard and never expect things to come easy to you, and constantly keep learning. So that's the goal. Hopefully one day, but horse racing will always have my heart.
Well, Brittany, we really appreciate you coming on to the HHH Racing podcast. See that 10 minutes of post? That was a piece of cake, right? That's no big deal. Listen, we'd love to have you on for a little bit longer, like handicaps and races, and hear, so you can share some of your expertise. But appreciate you having on tonight. Wish you good luck with all your upcoming, TV appearances and perhaps the betting windows. And good luck to your father, and happy holidays to yourself and your family as well.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for having me on. Happy holidays. I really appreciate it. And yes, best of luck at the windows or on the app.
Great. Thanks, Brittany. Take care. Have a great night.
Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you, Brittany.
All right, bye-bye. All right, Paul, there you go. I made my
Thank
promise.
God. All I can say is thank God Matt Miller is our friend.
Well, Matt definitely had something to do with it. I appreciate that. Yeah, shout out to Matt Miller
Obviously, we knew that.
for helping get us on there. Pete and Kyle, we're going to let you guys go here in just a second. But you will be with us on Thursday. I believe both of you, correct, will be with us on Thursday, which is our next show, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, don't go anywhere. We've got Chad Brown coming on here in just a few minutes. But Pete and Kyle, I know you guys have looked a little bit already at the possible entries for the Cigar Mile and some bigger races. Pete, was there any particular names? I think there's one name that perhaps starts with a Z that our next guest might have something to say about that may be running. We're not even sure yet.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and we're talking about Zandon, so I guess if it's always good to see the Triple Crown participants come back, and when they do, that's always the more popular, and we like to see how they're doing, and hopefully he's someone who can use this as a springboard to hopefully, and I don't really know the answer to this, I assume there will be a 4-year-old campaign after this, so hopefully he can progress. I know Paul is a big fan of Zandon and sort of was through the Triple Crown process.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and let you go. And Paul, of course, is going to stay on. Pete and Kyle, really appreciate your time. We will see you guys Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
All righty. All right, Paul, let me go ahead and take care of something here very quickly with our brand. Paul, Brittany's fantastic. She does a great job. We love listening to her. Her expertise is fantastic. And, if anyone wants her to do baseball or something else, Paul, I mean, why not? I'm sure she's, very knowledgeable in other sports. It's crazy to me that if she wants that opportunity, she hasn't gotten it yet.
Yeah. And I think if you can do racing, you can pretty much do anything, because racing is all about storytelling. As he said, the stories, the Cody Dorman story is an extreme example, but there are so many stories. Every race, there's a story. And, if you spend any time on the backstretch in the morning or at the training track or whatever, there are so many stories. So I think if you could do racing and, especially as well as she does it, that would be a no-brainer for a network. And she already works for NBC, so let's make it happen, folks.
Good call by Ross Blacker. Ross, how you doing tonight? With Gene Edwards made that transition. There's a lot of people that have made that transition. Paul, as I wait in the background here for Chad Brown, I want to give everyone a little bit of insight before we bring on Chad. I met Chad Brown at the Breeders' Cup actually still this month, but several weeks ago. One of the most, of course, talented, well-known trainers in the country. I want everyone to know at home, other than the comment I said at the beginning of the show about making sure we keep everything respectful and cordial in terms of people's comments, is that this show had been planned since the Breeders' Cup. And so obviously, when you have an opportunity to have someone on such as he, I felt like it was definitely something worth doing. So just let everyone knows we're waiting. Chad should be coming on any moment now. Paul, while we're waiting here, let's talk about some of the races that are coming up. You got the Cigar Mile, of course. We're going to talk more about this on Thursday. 8 p.m. Eastern. And also, I should let everyone know, Paul, this Saturday, we will be live coverage right here on the HHH Racing podcast of the Cigar Mile Day at New York. You got the Damoiselle, you got the Remsen. There's a fourth race, and it's evading me now, Paul. I can't think off the top of my head now, but there's 4 graded stakes. The Cigar Mile is traditionally it's sort of like the last big handicap race of the year, Paul. Do you prefer, let me ask you a quick question, Paul, even though we don't have the entries yet. Do you prefer horses stretching out like really talented sprinters like a Mind Control, who's gone a mile, but he's really more of a sprinter? Or do you think you might prefer in general in these races, horses that are cutting back in distance, going that flat mile one turn at New York?
Yeah, I think I'd lean to cut back a little bit, Howard. Jeff Amster, thank you. It's the go for one.
Thank
Good.
you.
Good
Yep.
point. Yeah, I think I'd lean to the cutback, especially where that, as you said, it is one turn. I know in 7 furlong races, that's one of my favorite angles. The horses that are cutting back from 2 turns to 7 furlongs. So kind of the same thing. It's a 1 turn mile, and historically, it's been. To your point about racing not being over for the year, it's a grade 1 in December, but it's historically been a good race.
No, it's been a fantastic race. I just, as you were talking, I checked my email to make sure that I didn't see any emails, and then I emailed. I'm sure he'll be with us here in just a minute. There's been some very good horses that have run in the Cigar Mile. And then in terms of Del Mar, this Turf Festival, I know they have stake races on Saturday and Sunday, Paul. They have many stake races. I believe Chad Brown will be sending some there. We're going to ask him that question. I know he sent Fluffy Socks, I believe. Was that 2 years ago? Was that last year? I'm not sure. But sometimes, the way this turf course is out east right now, of course, the season is over for turf racing in New York. Some of these horses are going to appreciate that nice, firm, warm weather out in California, Paul, and get on that nice grass.
And I'm telling you, you talk about betting angles. Turf horses who go east to west for me are automatic plays. And I mean, almost regardless of how they look on paper. I may be an East Coast snob, but I think that the turf horses going east to west have a significant advantage.
Yeah, for sure. And I would agree with you. Of course, we have to see the fields, and there is some home course advantage, but I like those East Coast horses coming out west in general. Paul, I'm in the process of getting in contact with Chad right now just to make sure everything is copacetic. So, Paul, why don't we do this while I do that? Why don't we talk about some of the Eclipse Awards that are coming? I'll let you just spitball a little bit off the top of your head. And I'm almost tempted to bring back. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring back Pete and Kyle. I'm going to bring you guys back on here just for a minute while we wait for Chad Brown. So let me bring back my great co-host Pete Visco and Kyle Roscoe as I, try to get in touch with Chad here. We'll just do a quick whip around. I'll let you guys handle it. Let's start. Of course, the older division is going to be Flightline. I'll tell you what, Paul. Pick a division. I know that we're spitballing, folks. This is completely unexpected, but. Excuse me. Pick a division, Paul, and what do you think? I'll let you decide, Paul.
Well, I mean, if you start with the youngins, I mean, 40 or Forte or Fort, however you want to pronounce it. Obviously, in the juvenile, he pulled the upset in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and knocked off supposedly the fastest horse who ever lived. Matt Miller. That's pretty good. He's good. That was good. He certainly looks good. And, you talked about the older horses. We talked about the controversial letter written in the CDA by Gary West, not the owner Gary West, the columnist Gary West, saying that he wouldn't vote for Flightline because he didn't think he ran enough. And I don't think Flightline ran enough either. But I think if you have a vote for Horse of the Year and it's not Flightline, that you should be your voting privileges going forward should be looked at. And we have an incident. We had and I am a voter, by the way, Howard. I am a proud Eclipse voter as a member of the National Turf Writers and Broadcasters Association, and it's something that you have to take seriously. Someone decided last
You froze up,
Yeah.
Paul.
Hey,
Okay.
Kyle,
So
I have
while
a,
we
I have
wait
a,
for Paul,
I have a question for Kyle. I'll give Kyle one. The most complicated division might be the 3-year-old division. Who
Yeah.
do you think? Who would you? I mean, obviously Rich Strike, if he would have run better last week, was a lock for the win. But since he ran dead last, I assume he's probably not in the leader spot anymore. So what are you thinking there?
No, Paul's covering his ears. He's done with us. But no, I did hear Rich Strike was training well this time of year. But other than that, I for me it has to be Epicenter, and I will be hoping that Epicenter gets that award. Just how good he's run. Granted, I mean the Breeders' Cup, and I mean arguably no fault of his own, just unfortunate circumstances. He's ran so well. He won the Travers very easily, might I add. I think Epicenter wins 3-year-old of the year.
Yeah, that's a tough one though, because it doesn't usually.
Yeah.
There's a standout based on their. Oh, go ahead, Howard.
I got to interrupt. Sorry. Chad Brown will be coming on in a minute, everyone. So everyone at home, we appreciate your patience, but Chad Brown will be coming on in just a moment. Go ahead, Pete.
No, I was going to say this is an odd division this year, just because usually there's more of a leader in the clubhouse based on either the Triple Crown or the post Triple Crown races, and they were sort of was beating each other. It was like a bad division in another sport where it's like they just beat each other up and none of them take the lead. But I guess Epicenter never ran badly in any of his races, whereas some of the other contenders did, I guess. So that probably gives him the edge in an interesting division this year.
For sure. Like you said, I mean, usually, you have the Derby winner, and then the Derby winner goes on to do some really nice races further on. So, you always have that kind of standout horse in the 3-year-old division this year. But this is one year where, I would still say Epicenter's a little bit of a standout in the regard, but I mean, it's definitely not as clear cut as it usually is.
Howard, didn't you mention, am I getting this wrong? Modern Games wasn't there talk of Modern Games, but usually the turf horses don't get, again, when they go head to head with the dirt horses, they have to be exceptional, and maybe he didn't run enough here to be exceptional like that. What do you think?
I think it's less about the turf and more they just ran here twice, Pete. I mean,
although
his 2 runs were, wow moments. But again, you're right. It's usually dirt, and they only ran, him twice here. But you can you certainly make an argument for him, but that's just not what they, traditionally do. Guys, I'm gonna make a bold prediction right before Chad comes on. Are you guys, everyone ready for this bold prediction? And Paul, I hope you took your blood pressure medication. Here we go. And I'm serious about this, deadly serious. Rich Strike is supposedly going to Dubai in March. My bold prediction,
Excellent,
is Rich Strike will hit the board in the Dubai World Cup. What do you think about that?
I mean, he's training great leading up to it. I mean, I could guarantee you that. I mean, that's a given.
yeah.
My main feeling, to be honest, is he needs a break. He's going to love the distance. Name the great U.S. dirt horses out there right now after retirements and whatnot.
Especially at distance too. I mean, especially at
why
going
can't he
long.
clunk up and get him the money there? I'm very serious about that. I really think it's possible.
Yeah,
I agree.
Fair assessment.
Paul, you push back?
I can't wait.
Paul's got no comment. He's stunned.
He said, "I can't wait."
You can't wait. Okay.
Well, I mean, he's not going to win it. Who's going to be in the field? And it's a long way off. But he could improve as a 4-year-old. There's certainly plenty of room for improvement.
Yeah, for sure.
I like the backhanded compliment, Paul. That was excellent. That was beautiful.
Update from Chad Brown. Again, I want to apologize to everyone. I know we have a lot of people listening. Update from Chad Brown. He's going to come on in about 6 minutes, and he also is willing to stay on as long as we would like. So thank you for that. He'll be on in about 6 minutes, everyone. So just be patient. In the meantime, guys, this gives us a great chance. Let me get back to him. Paul, why don't you pick another Eclipse spot and I'll section, so to speak, and I'll go ahead and get back to Chad here.
Well, isn't the sprint an interesting division? What do you guys think about the sprint? I'm trying to think about the Breeders' Cup, and Jackie's Warrior obviously going into that race was the prohibitive favorite, but unfortunately, I think he's a tremendous horse, and I'm very proud of myself for saying he. But couldn't get it done in the Breeders' Cup once, which is really unfortunate because I'll tell you, if you ever, you've seen him on TV, you see that horse in person, he just has gears upon gears. And I'll be honest with you, I thought the Cody's Wish loss in the Forego was just a byproduct of, the extra furlong and Jackie's Warrior getting cooked in the pace. But, it just didn't work out in the Breeders' Cup. So I think that really kind of opens the door. So to speak.
Kyle, can you give it to Elite Power? I mean, I know usually they lean a lot to the Breeders' Cup winner, but boy, I mean, he's got a very to say a soft win in the Vosburg is probably not. It's accurate, but it's probably not fair. I mean, he can only race against who he's racing against, but he did win the Breeders' Cup and beat Jackie's Warrior. I mean, Kyle and Pete, I don't know where you go with that. I would say Jack Christopher. I'm sure Chad Brown will agree with that statement.
Yeah, I mean, it's really like you said, a lot of these awards, they kind of lean with that Breeders' Cup form. But I mean, Elite Power broke his maiden at Churchill, I think in like June or something like that, right, this year, and then he went on to win 5 straight, including the Breeders' Cup and the Vosburg. So
I'd have to look. I don't recall. You could be right. I don't want to say correct or not, but
I think that's right. But but still, like you said, I mean, it depends on how much you weight the Breeders' Cup and comparatively, because Jackie's Warriors still won 4 stakes races earlier in the year, and obviously Jack Christopher ran really well as well. So it kind of
Dewey fan agrees. Perhaps,
yeah. So it's like it just comes down to how big do you weight the Breeders' Cup races in comparison to all the other stakes races throughout the year. I think when deciding a division, especially like the sprint division.
Easy Fun Money. That's a name that I haven't seen. Thanks for joining the show talking about
Kyle, you're right.
Lucky horses with Jack Christopher. I'm assuming he's
Kyle, you are right. Third in the maiden at Churchill in May. One is broke his maiden at Churchill in June, and then he won an allowance at Churchill, an allowance at Saratoga, the Vosburg, and the Breeders' Cup. It's
good call, Kyle.
I got to tell you what that's you can make a pretty compelling case for him. 100%.
Goodnight Olive had an unbelievable year. I mean, I suppose they don't usually give it to a filly, but I don't know. That's not a bad. That's not a
That's
bad.
going to be the
right?
female.
Yeah.
Right. She'll get the female.
Yeah, she'll get the female.
Right. For sure.
I mean, the one division that would have been interesting, but it sort of got taken over late was sort of the older mares. What looking like a pretty tight one. It was maybe Clairiere for a while. Latruska was maybe at the beginning of the year, had a couple nice races. Then Clairiere sort of took it over, but then Malathat sort of locked it up with those last couple, and Clairiere having those slip ups. But that would have been an interesting one. I think now it turned out to be pretty easy though in the end.
I mean, we saw how close it was in the Breeders' Cup. So if it wasn't for that one race in the middle at Saratoga, I mean, it might have been a really close race, but. I think especially with that Breeders' Cup win, I think Malathat locks that division.
Probably, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think at this point.
And then there'll be the turf. I mean, the American Turf Horse this year just not great. I'm just curious to see what they do there. I mean, I don't think they're gonna,
Let me check.
give it to Tuesday. That would surprise me, but I don't know. I mean, it could be our boy Gufo. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to look at it more carefully. I wasn't really prepared to look at the Eclipse possibilities tonight on turf.
I never loved the whole and Ross, to answer your question, but with the Breeders' Cup, Goodnight Olive won 2 grade ones, and those were the only stakes races of the year. So that's another one. Yeah, thanks, Matt, in the chat there. But I never loved the horse comes over, wins the Breeders' Cup, and wins the Eclipse, and they do that a lot in the turf divisions, unfortunately. But that just seems a little cheap. I don't know what you guys think about that as sort of an end result where the horse just comes over. And yeah, maybe they're better than all of ours, but it seems like there should be a little bit more of a history for the year of running than that.
I agree.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree, Pete. I think you got to run more than once here. I really do.
For sure. We've got look who's on it. Justin Mustari. Caravel. Well, listen, Justin, I know Caravel did just fine for you and many other people. Beating a horse that, Paul, I know that you were against for a while, and you picked your spot. Did you like Caravel at all, Paul? I know you were against Golden Pal a bit in that race.
That's a sad tale. I had Caravel as a C in my pick, my vertical, my pick 5. I didn't like, I can't say I liked her, but I certainly thought enough of her chances to include her as a C. And, that worked out well. And as usual, there was a stumbling block later on.
Hey, we talked the whole year on the shows about some speed on the turf getting to the lead. You just have to grab the right one. And unfortunately, our podcast never seems to grab the right one, but that seems to be the way to win some of these
I'll
races.
tell you, that's a cool horse, though.
See, that's not exactly a glowing endorsement that people watch on the show.
I
That we
know,
don't
but
pick
what
a
am I
winner.
gonna say?
He didn't really mean that, folks. He didn't
I just meant when the speed gets on the top and runs away.
Okay.
That's the only time. We pick winners in every other circumstance, obviously.
we do pick a lot of winners on this show. I have to humbly say. I think we covered pretty much every division. I mean, Wonder Wheel's going to win. Actually, there's an interesting question. And once again, for those of you waiting, we appreciate it. Chad Brown should be coming on any moment now, and I promise when he it gets on, we'll get him on, and we'll have plenty of questions and time for him. There's an interesting question on Twitter, guys. Wonder Wheel versus Hoosier Philly. I think is that the name for the really talented Philly that Tom Amos. Wonder Wheel obviously is going to win the Eclipse Award, but in terms of talent, this Tom Amos horse looks.
That she should.
I don't know if she beat Kyle, but wow, did she do it impressively this past week?
Yeah, I mean, we all watched it. I mean, you guys covered it. I mean, she looked extremely impressive in that race, and like you said, I mean, Wonder Wheel won the Alcibiades and then went on to win the Breeders' Cup in a completely different fashion than she won the Alcibiades. But it's again, yeah, she probably has that locked up. But yeah, definitely a interesting runner coming into next year as long as she stays healthy in Hoosier Philly.
Did you guys see? I didn't read the article. I just saw maybe the headline on Twitter.
And Amos,
where they talked about Hoosier Philly about the Derby. Is that Paul? Did you see anything? Did you notice that anywhere? I didn't read to see where that was coming from. But.
Yeah, it's Amos has floated that. First of all, he has said she's the best young horse he's had. And remember, he won the Oaks with Serengeti Empress, so that's something to say. But Tom is a Louisiana guy, and the Louisiana route to the Derby has proven to be pretty successful. So I would not be surprised at all if you see her in one of if you see her in the first one, if he wants to dip, because then he's got all sorts of time to come back and win the Oaks, a la Secret Oath, right? So it would. I think it's great. I just think the storyline, it just makes for a great story. Another thing to help us through the winter. Think the possibility of a Philly on the Derby Trail. So hats off to Tom for even floating it, and we'll see what happens. But she has looked pretty damn impressive as far as the Eclipse. It's frankly, she shouldn't get one vote for the Eclipse Award based on what this Wonder Wheel won the races she had to win, and Hoosier Philly could very well be much better than Wonder Wheel next year, but the Eclipse is voted on this year. So, correct. But
Kyle, you had a thought on.
Hey, and Tom Amos is not in it for the attention.
No. Paul, I'm going to go ahead and interrupt you guys because Chad Brown is waiting backstage. So, Pete and Kyle, again, thanks for being on, and we'll see you guys on Thursday night. Thanks, guys. All right, take care. All righty. Chad, if you can hear me, this is Howard. Just go give me a little thumbs up there in the background. If you can hear me, Chad, a little thumbs up. Terrific. Okay. Paul, this is very exciting for everyone here at the HHH Racing Podcast. I am very proud to bring on one of the best trainers in the entire world. I had the opportunity to meet him at the Breeders' Cup. Paul, I know you've met him and talked to him as part of working for the Saratoga Special. Let's bring on the fantastic trainer from the New York area, Mr. Chad Brown. Chad, how you doing tonight?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Sorry I'm a little late, guys. Got a little hung up on my kids there.
Nah, absolutely no problem, Chad. Looks like you got some trophies there in the background. You're all set up. Chad, just want to first slightly apologize for Paul's sound. He's not at home. He just refereed a college basketball game. I know you're a big sports fan. So he's at a community college in a conference room. So if he breaks up a little bit, Chad, I apologize for that.
My daughter's basketball game. So sympathize.
Terrific. So, Chad,
Well,
as
you're
you know,
not
we have
yelling
a
at the refs, I hope, Chad.
No. Definitely. We leave them alone.
Chad, as you know, we have a bunch of questions, and we have a lot of people watching. We're going to try to incorporate some viewer questions as best we can. But we want to talk about a series of things with you. And again, we really appreciate you coming on. I know you don't do these types of podcasts too often, especially a live podcast, and have the opportunity to talk to our great fans. So again, thanks for coming on. There's going to be questions on the bottom of the screen, Chad, also that you can refer to, as well as questions from our viewers as well. As you know, this is a big weekend coming up. A lot of people sort of have the feeling that, you know, racing season is pretty much over with the Breeders' Cup. But as you know very well, that is not the case. There's big races, the Turf Festival of Del Mar. There's the Cigar Mile Day in New York. So the first question I have at the bottom of the screen, give us all a little intel, Chad. Which of your horses, if any, are running in some of these graded stakes this weekend?
Well, we have Zandon's going to run in the Cigar Mile, and so I'm excited about that. We've freshened him up a little bit and cut him back to a mile, and he seems to be doing really well. So we're looking forward to that. And then the Matriarch, we shipped 2 horses to California today, Dolce Zell and Regal Glory. Probably Regal Glory's last race of her career. So obviously won the race last year. So that's pretty exciting for to still be grade 1 this late in the year. So those are really our main graded stake horses this weekend. We sent another filly out, Lagoria, to Del Mar as well, run on the 2-year-old filly stake on Saturday.
Terrific. And Paul, I don't know if you have a question specifically about Zandon, but Chad, Zandon was my Derby horse. I just think he's super talented. He's had a very nice year. I mean, to say disappointing, I don't think would be very fair to you or the ownership. But Paul, perhaps that turnback might work well for Chad and Zandon. Wouldn't you agree, Paul?
Yeah, I was going to say, Chad, it almost feels like this horse maybe deserves to win a race like this. I mean, third in the Derby when he looked like a winner coming home. Third in the Travers, which I know is a race you'd love to win. Second in the Jim Dandy. Of course, he won the Bluegrass. Second in the Pennsylvania. He shows up every time, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's a very consistent horse. He hasn't won since the Bluegrass, but he seems to fire every time, and he's putting us in really good positions to win some big races. He's been consistent all year, and I'm pretty proud of him to make it through a pretty tough 3-year-old campaign and still be sound and training as good as he was before the Derby. So I do, to your point, I do think he deserves to really win one of these races and end his season on a really good note for a horse that's really showed up all year.
And Regal Glory has danced every dance, Chad. Unfortunately, she's run into another one of your trained horses in Italian a few times this year. And Father Time, of course, is undefeated. And, maybe she's lost a bit off the fastball, but what a fantastic career Regal Glory has had, Chad.
She has, and, she might just be at the tail end of that, of off her peak. But, a couple of those, out of those last 3 starts, 2 of them, I don't think she really had a good trip either. I mean, even the Breeders' Cup, again, she was just parked way out wide the whole way. And these are tough races against the boys. 3 back at Saratoga and the 4 Dave, the same thing. And I just think those are really challenging trips for her. And the First Lady, she got a really good trip and was second best in Italian. But I think the key for her is, last year in the Matriarch, Jose just decided to let her roll early, and it proved to be really, really smart move where she got out in front and got over and saved Brown being in the front. But I think the key to her is just not giving her so much to do, especially really at the tail end of her career here. I'm not really looking for a wide trip.
Yeah, well, good luck with all 3 of those runners. Chad, I'm going to try to, like I said, incorporate questions from myself and Paul along with our viewers. A quick comment from Easy Fun Money wants to comment. Look, all that hardware, Chad, you got in the background there. So Easy Fun Money appreciates that. Question from Jeff Amster for you, Chad. How many horses did you buy at Tattersall's last month, and when can we expect to see any of those horses? Thanks, Jeff, for the question.
Yeah, so for Klaravich, I think we bought about 16 or 17 horses, which is about what we've been doing the last few years. And what we do is we bring them over to Ocala. We split them between a couple farms. We break them, and we They'll start coming into me by about May. When we first started doing this Tattersalls experiment, about 5 or 6 years ago, actually, Peter Brandt gave me the idea. He's been buying them every year too. And then I asked Mr. Klarman, he said he'd be happy to try to buy some. We used to buy a lot of horses that were racing already, European horses. Really, when I learned that from Frankel, he was buying a lot of horses over there. And then when I started training, they started sending them to me when I started doing pretty well. And then I started buying some. I had some money behind me, but man, it changed. Not as many people willing to part with their horses anymore. Either the prices were really higher. There's just, very few people to buy off of. Now you look at European racing, and you're not going to buy a horse off of, Godolphin or Wertheimer's or the Aga Khan. I mean, these horses is not for sale. So it got harder. And Mr. Brandt had said to me one day when he first got back in the game and he got hooked up with me is, he was trying to get caught up on what he missed the last 20 years, and how things were. And we started going over and, ironically, my sister Charlie was racing already. But even then he said, this is pretty hard buying these horses. And he's not afraid to write a big check for the right horse. But he saw we're going to have to do something different. We're going to have to create our own horses, our own system. If we want European blood horses over here, we're not going to be able to buy enough of them. So he was the one who really wanted to go over. And so far, we've been able to really cultivate our own horses from scratch, so to speak, from yearlings, and develop them ourselves.
Chad, were any of your ownership involved in the Arcana sales in France in the last few months?
Yeah, we bought a few over there too. We're just looking to, look for new opportunities, and we're starting to buy some horses over there too.
Terrific. Paul, I'm going to let you ask the first question about our next topic, and I just want to do a very quick recap, Chad, about the 22 Breeders' Cup, because of course you had a wonderful story with Goodnight Olive winning, and I'm just looking at some notes that I have here. That was your, I believe, 16th Breeders' Cup win in your career, which is absolutely amazing. And of course, you did it on dirt, and so all those people that only think you. There's some people that still, for some reason, Chad, think you only train. I know you're chuckling about it because it's so ridiculous that Chad's a turf trainer. It's so silly. But Paul, Goodnight Olive was a great story, and then in Italian also ran great. Paul, do you want to ask anything in particular? And as you do that, Paul, I'm actually going to bring up the stretch run of Goodnight Olive. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I remember seeing Goodnight Olive at Saratoga, Chad. It was so obvious she was coming into her own, and she was kind of the. You see a lot of horses go into the Breeders' Cup that look like they're in top form, but for some reason they tail off. But boy, she was just never in doubt. How were you as confident in her going in as it looked in the way she ran?
I really was. Going to these Breeders' Cup races, like you said, we've had a lot of success in them, but I don't take anything for granted. I've walked away. If we won 16 of them, believe me, I walked away 16 times over the last 15 years, me training, disappointed with horses or winners too. That's how hard they are to win. But I'll tell you, when you're lucky enough to go into a Breeders' Cup race with a horse doing as well as she has and is consistent, talking about a horse that's only been defeated one time and it was her first start, it gives you a lot of confidence. The closer we got to the race, we start looking at the numbers. It did look like there was a big gap back to second. If I could get her to run, me and my team could get her to run back to that ballerina at Saratoga. When you handicap our Breeders' Cup lineup this year, you're always, even if we've had success over the years, you always have to keep adapting to what you're doing. Frankel would tell me that, and from year to year, depending on where the venue is and a lot of other circumstances, leading horses up to the big races, you might change your approach a little bit. This year I had a lot of horses off layoffs. I chose not to prep them with some horses and just brought them in fresh. She was one of them, and I think for her it worked. Yeah, I mean, I went in there with a lot of confidence, and I did a good job to work out the trip.
And Echo Zulu, I was just going to say, Chad, Echo Zulu, had a great year coming off a good prep at Churchill, and she just and ran a very good race, a very creditable race, and she ran away from her. Howard just showed the replay. She ran away from her in the stretch.
Yeah, she really did. She ran. Like I said, my goal was when I decided not to run her in between, keep her fresh. A horse that's had some soundness issues. Obviously, look at her age and look at the time she's run. She's a lot like her daddy, when we had Ghost Zapper, he wouldn't run much, but when he did, he was effective, and I watched Frankel really space his races out. She reminds me of him a lot. Same sort of issues we used to deal with Ghost Zapper, same for her. The fact that she was able to go in there fresh, I think really, really helped her. And I was just trying to get her to run close to the ballerina. I knew in numbers it would be good enough, and she might have actually ran a little better.
Chad, I was had the privilege. I was in the BCBC contest at Keeneland, and we had an opportunity to have fantastic place right by the paddock. So we were literally right there. I have to tell you, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the show. Goodnight Olive looked unbelievable in the paddock, and I hope you don't get mad at me saying this. I was actually trying to beat her a little bit, only because she was such a low price, Chad. I mean, I love the horse, and obviously you guys do a great job. Just from a betting perspective, I think she was 8-5, and I turned to my friend, our co-host Kyle Roscoe, who was just on. I said, Kyle, Goodnight Olive looks unbelievable. So you had her absolutely ready. Quick question from Dewey Fan, who's a big fan of the show, no pun intended. I was going to ask you this, but Chad, all these European horses are coming over to the United States for the Breeders' Cup, and they're pilfering the village. They're taking all the money. When are you going to go over there, sir, and take some of that money? We'd love to have you go over there to Europe. But in all seriousness, I know it's something you've been considering. Any thoughts for next year sending some horses over to Europe to compete?
Yeah, it's a good question. So right now, I don't have any that I'm planning on doing it with. It is a good question. Looking back on it, there was probably a horse or two in the past I probably should have went for some big races, and I didn't, and I do regret it. Newspaper Record was the one that sticks out. I had so much success in the Belmont Oaks when they first made the race. Right away, we won it a couple years right away, and I think it's a great series in New York. And I don't know, we do so well here. I just like to stay in my lane, so to speak, and just do what I do. And with her, she missed her whole 3-year-old year. Just a wrong type of races going that far, and she got away from us mentally a little bit. But anyway, that was one horse I should have took over there and ran in the Coronation and right back to Newmarket where I bought her, and I think she would have done well. So I learned from that. If I have one like her again, I'll do it. In this current crop, I don't see anything that steps out. But I can leave you with this: if you see me over there with a top hat walking around over at Ascot, I like my horse. If you see me go,
I like seeing the tips and tails. That'd be a good look for you, Chad. I look forward to seeing that. On the bottom of the screen, Paul, I'm gonna talk a little. I'll let you ask the question about Jack Christopher. Blazing Sevens, Chad, was a horse I loved, to be honest, with the Breeders' Cup. Didn't quite fire. You're probably a little disappointed with that effort, but he's very talented. And then also, could you expound a little bit on Domestic Spending? How's the horse doing? He's such a beautiful horse. I saw him at Arlington last year at the Arlington Million, because Arlington's only about 15 minutes away from me. Give a quick update on the health of Domestic Spending, and then a little bit about Blazing Sevens. And then Paul, I'll let you ask about Jack Christopher, Paul.
Sure. So with Blazing Sevens, I agree. I don't have any excuse for the horse. I loved the horse going to the race. He was training super, and I thought he got a very fair trip, and he just couldn't kick. He was following the winner. And
Forte, I believe.
Yeah, the horse got away from him on the turn, and he just didn't have it. I was disappointed. The horse came out of the race good, and we're just resting him up a little bit down at Payson Park, and we'll get him back on the trail. I guess my hope is that maybe he just didn't love Keeneland. I mean, that's just a hope, not an excuse for the race. Everyone runs over the same track, but moving forward out of the race, if you have Derby hopes for the horse, that's what you really have to, bank on, is that maybe Keeneland wasn't his track. We can get him back on the trail.
You keep him 2 turns, Chad. He's by Good Magic, so obviously 2 turns you would think wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, it wouldn't, and he actually has a lot more range than his dad. So I don't think it was the issue. He just, for whatever reason, didn't fire. So, and then with Domestic Spending, the horse is doing well. He's still at Rood and Riddle. We weren't able to get him home. Maybe this next week. I was just talking to Dr. Bramlage today about the horse and about the whole case, and he seems to be doing really well. And I think what people need to understand about that is, and everyone's been really supportive about it. I mean, this horse, in Dr. Bramlage, confirmed this today. I mean, what we think is, this horse, and it was off a layoff, and we ran him in a Breeders' Cup race, but he had to work for vets a couple weeks before the race just to draw blood, work, watch him cool out. And horse doing super. When a horse has a pelvis injury in a race, generally it happens out of the gate. So you break from the gate, you, in theory, might crack the pelvis very small. And then as the race goes on and the crack gets bigger, then until the horse feels it, then you pull the horse up. So horse breaking from the gate, running, right? If anyone wants to learn, listening out there, it doesn't matter what level race you're running in. You could be running at a claiming race on a Wednesday at Aqueduct. You could be running in the Breeders' Cup race. If you're talking about the first half of a horse race on turf, the pace is about the same for any race. And these injuries generally happen leaving the gate. So the fact he's in a Breeders' Cup race has absolutely zero to do with this horse's injury. You know, he was injured, unfortunately, and we're doing everything we can. Mr. Klarman's gone to great effort and expense, and we're happy to do it. He's happy to do it to really save this horse. And the team at Root and Riddle has been super accommodating. Multiple vets rotating, always looking at this horse, and he's getting the best care. And he's about ready to go over to the farm, which would be great. So, fingers crossed he keeps moving forward.
Terrific. And then Paul, real quick about Jack Christopher.
Yeah, I do, but I would just want to touch on one thing, Chad. I've had a theory, and I wanted to see if there's any validity to it. It seems from afar that domestic spending was working so well. My question is, was the Breeders' Cup a goal, or did the horse, once you started him back, was he working so well that he literally dragged himself into the race and you felt, you know what, he deserves a shot in this race based on the type of horse he's been and how well he's been working? I seem to think that maybe that wasn't a goal until the horse, but you can answer it.
Yeah, it's great question. So, Paul, a little of both. Earlier in the year, the Breeders' Cup was a goal with one prep. Then when I ran out of time and didn't have a prep for the horse, I temporarily just took it off the table. Because the horse is off such a long layoff, he had to work for vets and be checked with blood drawn and such, like I just alluded to anyway. So I brought him to Keeneland to get that all done. And as I looked at it more, I actually didn't see a race that really fit him distance-wise other than the Breeders' Cup. And I even thought that if the mile was a little short and he didn't win, as long as he ran well, and I thought if he was training well enough to at least run well, finish well, like most of our horses do, then he could move on to the Pegasus race at Gulfstream. So it, kind of interesting to use a Breeders' Cup race potentially as a prep. But when you have horses at this level, you can do that. And I'm experienced enough to know that. And this horse is good enough to do that. So I think he was lined up to run terrific. Unfortunately, the horse was very likely injured out of the gate. And that was brought to me by the world's best veterinarian saying, Chad, this is probably what happened, so you know. And I believe them. And here we are. So in the end, the very last work before I had no pressure on me to enter the horse, he did drag me into the race thinking, not only could this be a prep, this horse might win the way he's working. So, and that's why I made the choice to run him.
Chad, before we get into Jack Christopher, just very briefly, a question from a wonderful friend and handicapper, Frank Mustari, who just won. His son Justin has just won a big tournament at Hawthorne. I asked you about this actually at the Breeders' Cup sort of after party, so to speak, where I talked to you, and I was really happy because I think I know the answer to this question. You've obviously big fan of Tampa Bay. They have a fantastic management, and their turf course is wonderful. And we know Gulfstream has had some issues, in the past, but their turf course, I saw a picture today, Chad, on Twitter. It looks absolutely gorgeous. You mentioned to me that you might actually be sending a string down at least early in the meet to see how they handle the turf. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm really happy to see that Gulfstream's gone to a lot of effort to try to improve their turf course. I haven't raced on it quite as much in the last years. A little of both reasons. That, I don't think Field of Turf course was really up to par for what my horses would prefer. Not that it was ever really dangerous. I can't tell you I've had injuries down there or something like that. They just didn't really run that well, and I didn't really like the way the feedback I got, how it felt. And also in the winter months, you have to rest your horses at some point, in my opinion, at least the way I do it. So it just kind of coincides with a little bit of a winter slowdown for me anyway. So when you combine those two things, you're just not going to see me at Gulfstream much. Now that they've put this much expense and effort into the turf course, and so far it looks good from afar, I'm going to try to participate a little bit more. Any of the circuits that I'm on, I mean, the racetrack's really my business partner. So I tell whoever the management is, look, I want to help you. You help us with accommodations and such often. And if I can participate more and it helps everyone, then I'll do it. So, yeah, I'm looking to run in a little bit more and test it out, and be happy to tell you guys what I think after a while.
Yeah, we're excited to see your horses down there. They're running this weekend or this week for the first time on that turf course. Paul, very quick, any quick Jack Christopher question? Then I do want to move on to some
Yeah.
other things as well.
Yes, so just to review, Chet, you kind of preemptively scratched him. You felt he was, I think, healthy, but your fear was that the vets may have scratched him right on top of the race, which is obviously a bad look for the sport, right? It's the biggest, and I think it's happened to you before. Can you just talk a little bit about that decision? And it's got to be a difficult one because you know the horse better than anyone, and you're not going to send him out there if you don't think he's healthy. Tell us just a little bit about that circumstance.
Yeah. So Jack Christopher, thank you for bringing that up. The Jack Christopher, really not a good moving horse. It's been kind of well documented. I mean, this day and age when you have workouts and everyone has a phone and there's videos of horses training and such. Everything's out there, and I don't have anything to hide. So I've always been one to. Anyone can tell you from the racetrack manager for derbies and Triple Crown races and Breeders' Cup. They give me a saddle towel, I put it on the horse. Here's my horse training, and everyone can see it, and everyone has an opinion. That horse is a scratchy mover, I'd say, and he's just, that's always been him. And how I manage and train horses, and I think a lot of top trainers do, you establish a par for your horse, and if they normally go that way, at least you get to know them. And if it's not a clean gait or they're a little off, I mean, you investigate as much as you can. And I think with that horse, we've been extremely thorough. And for him, we've known him to be that way. The tracks that house him and the vets that have looked at him in numerous different regions, they have notes on him. That's the way it goes. So we got to the Breeders' Cup, and of course, there's a heightened awareness, I'd say, and effort, by all the teams to make sure we have as clean an event as we can. And I totally support that, especially it's all, this is on national TV, and it's our chance to really sell horse racing and promote it, not, discourage people from watching and such. So I get it. They were worried about the horse. He doesn't move well and this and that. And they've started to really put the pressure on me, maybe not to run the horse. And everyone has to do their job, and I'm not here to dog the vets because it's not an easy job. I mean, and looking at the horse, if I didn't know anything about the horse, I would agree and say this horse is not a good moving horse. But we have all the diagnostics available. The workouts are right there on XBT. They had a workout show. I mean, you saw the horse working. You have to turn in your records. The horse had zero medication to work. So this is what you're going to get. They just came to a point where they told me, not maybe, they said, we are going to scratch the horse. And I didn't really want to come out that week and say it that way. And so when I took it to the owners and I knew they've already made their mind up, I decided to take them out early in the week because I really didn't want it to be a distraction. And I think it was successful because it was a story for 24 hours, but it wasn't a story on the days of the event. And that's what I really didn't want. So it was unfortunate, and but I quickly turned the page after that and moved on because there's really no sense complaining about it and getting into what ifs and such. And like I said, that with the veterinary teams, they're not easy jobs. So I understand where they're coming from in a way. I don't agree with it, but it doesn't make their job any easier. So
No.
it's
Well, Chad, we appreciate your transparency, and perhaps Jack Christopher will get. Is that an Eclipse Award winner for you? Is he sprint champion? It's going to be fascinating. I know
Yeah.
they put a lot of emphasis on the Breeders' Cup, but boy, what a career and what a year he's had. So he has to be strong consideration for that award, don't you think?
I'd say so. Those type of things I've learned over the years is, they're truly out of your hands. So
Sure.
we'll see. I mean, of course, I'm biased, and I think he's got a shot at it, but we'll have to see.
Chad, before we talk into our next topic, and of course we're here with Chad Brown, and again, Chad, let us know. I know you said you'll be happy to stay on as long as needed, but
As long as you need, if there's questions from people out there, I'm happy to answer as many as you have.
we really do appreciate that. And Paul, I don't know what your schedule is, Paul. He already refereed a basketball game and everything. So, but Paul, I think you're good for a while.
I'm gonna close the building. They told me I'd be the last one out of the
Perfect.
building.
We'll get you a janitor outfit if necessary, maintenance crew, and you can help clean
That's
up
all.
the place if necessary. Chad, this is a question from my wonderful co-host Pete Visco and also my good friend Matt Miller. And this is something I've always wanted to ask you because I enjoy betting, and obviously I bet a lot in New York and a lot of your horses. When you have multiple horses in a race, especially in big stake races, are there difficulties with instructions for the jockeys or strategy to ensure that you don't limit any of their chances? Because I've sat here and said, oh, it's the other Chad, of course, that won the race. And what do we do, Chad? How do we bet your races, when you have multiple horses? And then, Paul, I know you have a question sort of piggybacking on that.
Well, I'll answer your question first. I don't really have any trouble with the instructions. I normally just try to allow the horses to fall into their natural running style. And I've said this before in interviews, and as a trainer, when you have multiple horses going for the same race or at the same talent level and same division, there's two ways to look at it. You can keep them separated the best you can. So then in theory, you have less headaches from clients complaining and such for the ones that lose, or you can race them against each other and take the approach of let me just eliminate all of the what ifs and just let them settle it on the racetrack, and that's what I obviously do. I choose to run them against each other. What I don't want is a client coming to me saying, I could have won that race if you let me run. So I'd rather just run the horse and take that conversation off the table and let them all run together. If there's options, of course I'd love to separate them, but what I don't want to do is keep a horse out of a race that really deserves to run in a race. So I always lead with that approach, and then I just deal with the aftermath when they cross the wire.
Paul, I think you talked about a quick question based on that, right?
Yeah, we talked a little last night, Chad. I think, at that some point, there's a 6-horse turf stakes and you have 3 of them. At some point, I think you must almost become the victim of high expectations. In other words, it's a huge story if you don't win it, right? And if you do win it, well, you had 3 out of 6. But I mean, you have to get those 3 to that race. But is there a little extra pressure when you're in that situation where, of course he's supposed to win this race?
Yeah, there is. And then there's some extra criticism one time. Well, all the fields are short because this guy has all the horses. And those kind of things really frustrate me because I know and I see who's nominated and I see who runs out of town and such. And there's people there that just don't run. And then I hate to say, well, we don't run because we have to run against you. We can't win. Well, sometimes I run 3 in a race of 6. I'm not favored with any of them. So, that's a little frustrating. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, if you're asking me about some of the slack or you might get or the expectations if you don't win, I don't care too much about that. If I'm expected to win and because I have to field or something and I don't, I'm not really concerned about that end of it. I can take that. I'm more concerned with why they didn't win. I get right to work trying to figure that out and what I could have done different or trying to evaluate the horses. But I try to, and the other thing is if I'm running multiples, it's normally in New York. You don't really see me do it anywhere but New York. And that's because my business is primarily based there. I have a lot of stall space between Saratoga and Belmont. Again, going back to something I said earlier, I view the racetrack, they're my business partners. You know, where everyone has a job to do. Everyone has someone to answer to. They do too. So, you know, if I can participate, if I'm using your facilities to house my staff, you know, house my horses, this costs a lot of money to run a racetrack in a backside. I mean, people don't understand. So if you're stable there, you're supposed to run there, and I don't want to hear, I'm 15-1, or I can't beat this guy, or you know, you're dealing professional sports here. You're not always going to win. You're always going to lose more than you win. So everyone needs to really run where they're stable. And I run here a lot. And when you look outside of New York, you'll see I really don't run multiples too much. If I do, it's maybe 2. So that's really the reason. It's because, you know, they're my partners.
We appreciate that. And Chad, we have a lot of comments that I'm not bringing up that everyone's appreciating your not only being on the show, but your transparency with all this. So again, thanks for doing that. We have 2. No, thank you. We have 2 more quick topics we want to talk about, Chad. One is next year. Let's talk a little about next year and some horses. I'm going to bring up something from Equibase here in just a moment. And then also I want to talk very briefly about your overall success and who you attribute that to. So horses to watch for next year. You already mentioned the Pegasus, of course, is the end of January. That's, I guess, the real next big stakes day in terms of purses and whatnot. There's the Pegasus Turf. There's the Pegasus Filly and Mare Turf, and there's, of course, the Pegasus itself. I'm going to go ahead and bring on the screen, Chad, right now, and you certainly do not have to talk about every single horse you're going to see on the screen, but what I'm about to show you are the top money earners from your stable in 2022. Now, some of these horses we know are retired, but if you want to just very quickly talk about any horses you like that I'm about to show on the screen, and then also expound, excuse me, on who might be pointing to the Pegasus card at the end of January. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this on the screen right now here. Let me go ahead and bring this up. Sorry, let me bring it on right now. Here we go. I'm the editor. I'm the producer, Chad. I do it all. So sorry for the button pressing here. Let me take this off the screen. Okay. Here are your top earners. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger in this year. Well, not that big. Let's see here. Well, I'm gonna go back a step. Sorry about that. Let me go back one. Okay. I'll keep it at that. I'm sure you can see that, Chad. Yeah, the horses, of course, some of these are retired. Which ones are you looking most forward to running in 2023, if that's a fair question?
Yeah, so with Zandon, we'll have to see how this goes. We had planned on giving him a break after the PA Derby. Then we kept him going because of the cigar race. It was very interesting. I'm happy we did because he's training good. Big question is going to be if he runs the way we think he will Saturday. You know, in theory, he's just supposed to take a break. It's like a pitcher. And you do a pitch count, right? And sooner or later, the math just adds up. You're going to have to, that's the way you got to look at it sometimes as a manager. But I'll tell you, you know, when you look at this Pegasus race in January, who's really going to run in it? A lot of horses retired. It's $3 million with no entry fee. 1.1 miles on the dirt seems to be his distance. So I have to really think about that one if I want to keep him going. Early voting, as you saw, he's retired to Coolmore. And Italian's going to be back in training. So you'll probably see her, hopefully, in the Jenny Wiley. We know that she likes Keeneland. Regal Glory will be retired. McCulloch is getting a rest at Payson Park. She'll be back next year. I think a good target for her, it might not be her first start of the year, but the New York Handicap at 1.25 miles at Belmont. As you saw, we will be racing back at Belmont for that summer, which is good. Get on that turf course over there. Goodnight Olive's going to be back in training. So I think a race for her, maybe that race at Keeneland, followed by the race at Churchill, maybe. I do think Goodnight Olive could stretch out a little bit at some point. So we might experiment with that a little bit. Bleecker Street was injured. I thought she was going to be retired. It ended up being not as bad as we thought. We did bring her back to Payson recently. We're going to see if she can hold up to some training. So far, the prognosis is actually way better than I thought. She'd have a soft tissue injury, minor. So she's going to be back. Adamo's getting a rest. He went way off form. You want me to keep going?
Well, I just want to say we are a big fan of Bleecker
Yeah.
Street. Many of us on this show, myself included, cashed on Bleecker Street at Tampa, at other places.
Yeah.
It was Diaz did a great job riding. Or what a great story that horse was, and congratulations on the training job with Bleecker Street this year. We enjoyed watching her run, Chad.
I'll tell you what, she's a pretty cool horse that come from pretty modest start. From, you're talking about Meadowlands and Monmouth, and you said Hector Diaz really did a great job getting along with. Even in my barn of stars and future stars, here's a horse that emerged from really nowhere, a well-bred, good-looking horse, but I had no idea she'd be a turf horse or get to that level. That's why I started her off sort of in AAA, and it goes to show you, again, and to other sports analogies, sometimes you go out on the minors and you start hitting 350, and all of a sudden you come up to the majors pretty quick, and that's what happened with her. And then we threw in the starting lineup with the big girls, and didn't she handle them? So I agree with you. She earned everyone's respect on our team.
I have one more horse I want to talk about, Chad, for next year, and I bet this filly. I think she's fascinating. Can we talk about Salima just for a second? I'm going to bring up the replay of the Winter Memories. I talked about her on this show. She won a few weeks ago. I always thought she had talent, but watching her replays, she's a little bit rank. She's a little bit immature, but it looks like you've got her to settle very nicely. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up the stretch run of the Winter Memories. Everyone pay attention to the 3-horse here, Salima. Chad, talk about this filly and how do you think she's going to be in the future?
So, yes, we loved this filly. As you've probably caught on in recent years, getting back to the Gulfstream turf and such, being a little frustrated with how some of our horses handled it. You've seen recent years, we started some of our better horses at Tampa. If I have maidens, newly turned 3-year-olds that are still maidens that we really like, horses like Salima, In Italian, Domestic Spending, Digital Age. I mean, all these horses debuted over at Tampa because the course seems to fit them better. So she did. We loved her, and she just galloped first time out like we thought she would. She came out of that race, she injured her ankle, unfortunately. That's why I didn't see her for a while. When I brought her back, I think it was at Saratoga, she didn't run that well, and it really confused me a bit. Well, after that, we got her back on track with a couple wins in a row, and now she's back to what we thought she'd be before we debuted her. What is she going to do next? I'm probably going to keep her going and try to run her in that American Oaks race at the end of the year at Santa Anita. Just because she's so lightly raced and missed the whole center of the season, I feel like she doesn't need a break right now.
I believe that's 1.25 miles, correct, at Santa Anita on their opening day card, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The way that
Terrific.
she in that replay you showed, it certainly looked like she's can get 1.25 miles. We'll see.
Paul, I'm going to let you lead off, Paul, with the next question. Our last topic, Chad, is, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen. I'm going to show some stats. I'm going to show a few things. The overall overarching topic here is to whom or what do you attribute your success over the years? You have a fantastic team behind you, Miklavich and Seth Klarman and Peter Brandt, etc. Just wonderful people. Paul, do you have a question that you'd like to ask about his team or his connections he's got behind him?
Well, yeah, it's related, and it gets back, I think, to the multiples, Chet. It seems like you spend a lot of time determining which jockey might fit which horse the best. Obviously, you have top guys. You have Irad, and you've ridden Flavien a lot over the last year or so with great success. But Manny Franco's had good success for you. Is that fair that you spend maybe? I know all trainers do it, but do you, with these top horses, really make a conscious effort to try to line up the jockey whose style you think fits the best with the horse?
And that's the question from Steve at the bottom of the screen. You can read that. Sorry to interrupt you, Chad, but a lot of people have that question.
Yeah.
Same idea.
Yeah, it's a good question too from Steve. So Paul, yes, certainly, I do spend some time on that, and I think as you go, you sort of get a feel for your horses and your jockeys who you're using, and I'd say more on the turf than the dirt for me. Not that dirt race doesn't involve some specific maybe skill or chemistry between a jockey and a horse, but I find it to be maybe just a little bit more important on the turf with the pace of the race and the tactics used and such. I think so. I just really go by feel, and I don't have a specific sort of recipe or a list of parameters where I try to fit certain jockeys and certain horses that way. I just sort of see, it might be something might be, horses that pull a little bit or something like that might be, better with certain horses. It might be the size of the horse. It could just be, the overall gait of the horse. Some horses just move a little bit different. And I can just see, I think when you're training horses, one thing that really comes in handy is if you have a good imagination. If you can see stuff before it happens, you try to anyway. You try to figure out how something's going to look before it actually gets put together. And I think the more often you can be right with those situations, you're just going to win just maybe a little bit more. I'm not always right, but I try to figure out when we're training lots of these horses who's going to fit them. And like you said, Paul, we have a lot of the best jockeys available. And oftentimes maybe it wouldn't have mattered who was on the horse. And I'm not only saying that with the ones that won, the ones that ran bad too. It didn't really matter. It wasn't their fault, So I think there's a large percentage of horses that do fit into that. But I also think there's some important decisions to be made. And I think certain horses' careers would have turned out much differently if we weren't able to establish the right rider on the right horse.
Chad, I want to finish our show with just showing some accomplishments that you've had, and it's just absolutely amazing. We deep dive here on the show. I make sure I do my research. Paul and I have both been in the game one way or another for decades. I'm going to show on the screen some accomplishments here that you've had, which are absolutely unbelievable. I'm sure you're aware of most of these, although the stats change all the time. For those people that are going to be listening to this, Chad, later on our audio platforms, let me just read what I have on the screen. You have 2,328 career wins. You're approaching very close to $250 million in career earnings, which is absolutely amazing. 25% win percentage, 59% in the money finish, 4-time Eclipse Award winner, 16 Breeders' Cup wins. I had to put up there, Chad, 13 seconds, which is pretty impressive. It's like a golfer, right? That Jack Nicklaus has won the most majors, but he's also finished second like a zillion times as well. So that's impressive also. 2 Triple Crown victories, of course, 17 grade ones this year.
That's what he said.
I know this is a really tough question, Chad. Is there one stat that you see on the screen that you're most proud of?
Well, you for putting that up. I think
that's most difficult to accomplish, perhaps.
Yeah, I think on behalf of my team, I'd say, because really they deserve most of the credit. I think all the Breeders' Cup success between the wins and the runners-up, I mean, these are massive efforts that you're going in with a lot of different horses to manage. And I'm proud of that because you're talking about between the wins and the runners-up, you're talking about horses in all different categories: dirt sprinters, 1.5 mile turf horses, 2-year-olds, 6-year-olds we've won with Breeders' Cup races. So when you and your team can show that you can train any kind of horse, I think it's very rare. I think that I was lucky I learned from a guy that could train any kind of horse. And I've tried to always mentor and teach my coworkers and my teammates, share with them what I know. A lot of them have a lot of God-given talent anyway, or they wouldn't even be able to apply what I teach them. So they're talented people in their own right. And a lot of them come to me with some experience. But when you're able to share with them and they're able to take it to the next level, and then I'm able to recruit horses for them to work with, and it all comes together. I think the Breeders' Cup really shows, because of the versatility of what we're able to do with a lot of horses. That's what I'm most proud of.
And Paul, the consistency we can see on the screen. I mean, Chad has been consistently around 25% and around 60% for years, Paul. That is not easy to do. Paul. Paul, can you hear me? Did we lose Paul? Paul, can you hear me?
It isn't, but I do want to talk, Chad, about one thing that was not on that Yes. I'm here. Yes,
Sorry, you're going in and out, Paul. Go ahead, try one more time with your question.
I'm here.
Go ahead, Paul. Go with your question one more time. You were going in and out.
Oh, I got it. There we go.
Did you have a
good?
question, Paul, real quick? You were talking?
Yeah,
Okay,
Chad, I
okay.
wanted to talk about one thing that was not on the screen and get your opinion. You can win. I know you want to win all the big ones, but Derby or Travers? And I know where you grew up and where
Oh,
you're from.
boy.
And I think it's a hard
The
question.
guy from
I think it's
Mechanicsville, that's a
hard
pretty tough question there, Paul.
It's real simple answer. It's a real simple. You asked me in April, it's a Derby. You asked me in July, it's a Travers. Same every year.
There we
That's
go.
fair.
Well, hopefully you'll get both of them at some point. Chad, before we let you go again, everyone here at the HHH Racing Podcast, and especially myself, we really appreciate you coming on, giving us all the time with our viewers. Hopefully a lot of people there watching at home had a lot of questions, answers. Anything else you'd like to close with, Chad, to end the 2022 racing season here?
No, just thanks for having me. I want to tell you, be happy to come on again and answer any questions anyone has out there. I'd love to show more, explain more what we do or how I approach things, or let them into a little bit more inside to answer anything you'd like. And for you two gentlemen, when you come up to Saratoga, I'd like to invite you out. Just ride around me in the morning. I take a lot of people out with me, and if you can see the training from the inside, and it's a good chance to ask me more questions and such. A lot of people that have been with me will tell you that. I might not be one to always, unless I have a platform like this, or if you are, right around me in the morning, you're not going to get a lot out of me. So it might be a little bit of a shock that I'll share this much, but
We do our best, Chad. We do our best.
both things want to have me again, have me on. I'd be happy to do it, and be happy to have you guys out in the morning. So.
Thank you, Chad. Paul's there several times because he, of course, writes for the Saratoga Special, and Tom Law. I'm a Chicagoan. I will be up for Whitney Week, though, guaranteed, with many people. I'm sort of my posse, so to speak. And so I'm going to take you up on that offer, Chad. We'll be in touch, and I'm very excited to hopefully spend a little bit of time with you, as much as you can give them, perhaps during Whitney Week. How does that sound?
Well, I'll only take you unless you open up Arlington. If you can get that done.
Oh, my goodness. We need another hour now for this show, Chad. You had to go there. Believe me, you and I, from your mouth, as my parents used to say, from your mouth to God's ears. That's a whole other story we're not going to get into. But I know how much you loved Arlington, because I saw your freaking horses run every race, the Beverly D, the Million, the Pucker Up, the whatever. You had a trophy you want to show real quick?
There somewhere.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, hopefully, that's probably never going to happen. But Arlington was a special place. Chad Brown, thank you very much, sir, for coming on. We're definitely going to take you up on the offer to come on again at an appropriate time. Good luck this weekend with Zandon and all your other runners in California, and then have a fantastic holiday season with your family as well, sir. Take care, Chad. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Same to both of you guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Good night, Chad. Bye-bye. All right, Pete and Kyle in the background. I'm going to bring you guys on real quick, if that's okay. And Paul, Chad was fantastic, as we knew that he would be, very transparent. And I also want to say, let me bring
Excellent.
Pete and Kyle back on. I want to say on behalf of everyone on this show, all of you that are watching and commenting, we really appreciate, myself especially, the positivity that was out there, the appropriate tough questions that we asked. Paul, I thought Chad was fantastic and very transparent, Paul.
Yeah, and we got news. Zandon's running. We were curious
There you
about
go.
that. We got Zandon's running, and he talked about keeping. Oh God, I just heard him. Who was he talking about? Staying on.
Pete, Paul, I'm going to cut you off a second, Paul. 'Cause Paul, you're cutting
Selena.
out, so I'm going to interrupt you. Pete and Kyle, I'm going to go.
Staying.
Okay, I'm going to take Paul off the screen, actually.
So
I'm gonna-
Paul's going senile on us.
I'm
He's
gonna-
just-
Sorry, everyone.
he's done.
Sorry about that, Paul. Paul, feel free to stay in the background, but I'm just going to take you off for the last 2 minutes. Pete and Kyle, did you glean anything from what Chad said? Pete, I'll let you go first. And as you talk, Pete and Kyle, I'm just going to randomly bring up some great comments about the show from our wonderful audience members. Pete.
No, honestly, I think the coolest thing was just Chad going down when you had the list of horses up. It seemed like he would have went through his whole stock if you would have let him. So he was sort of just running down the list. And it's always cool because the one thing we don't know as outsiders sometimes, unless you read it in an article, is what are the thoughts? What's the trainer thinking? Is he thinking, hey, this horse needs a layoff because of X, Y, and Z, or this horse is coming back because of this, or this and that? We're not always privy to that information. So to hear, a trainer with so many top quality horses, to hear just, a little bit its and bits about each one of them, that's kind of cool. And you don't get that.
Kyle, before I let you respond, I just want to say, anyone that's watching us for the first time tonight, we really appreciate you. Please spread the word about the HHH Racing Podcast. Check out our Power Picks through Patreon. Look below the video player. Subscribe. Tell your friends. This is a bit abnormal tonight, just from the fact we have such star power with our guests. But if you're new to this show, we give great handicapping shows on Thursday nights. We have wonderful interviews with other trainers and jockeys. We've had Tom Durkin on. We've had Lafitte Pinkai. We've had a lot of people on. So if you're new to the show, thank you very much for joining us tonight on the HHH Racing Podcast, and don't be a stranger. Kyle, I'll let you have the last word. Chad was great. Anything that he said that sort of struck you in particular?
I mean, it's just like when we met him Breeders' Cup weekend. He's just, I'm very impressed with how transparent he is and how willing he is to talk to, because like we said before the show, he doesn't do very many of these, live podcasts at all. So the fact that he was very willing to be, fully transparent with all his Breeders' Cup horses, and his plan for basically his entire, stakes winning stable. So it was just extremely cool to hear, and I see a lot of positive comments in the chat about him being so transparent and being willing to answer all the questions, especially from the viewers as well. So just hats off to him. It's amazing to listen to.
Yeah, it's great, and it would be nice, Pete, to have the kind of stable that he has. He just reloads, right? It's like University of Kentucky.
It's Kentucky. I was just thinking the same.
Whatever. Just pick your favorite team, right? They don't rebuild in the Chad Brown shed row. They just reload, don't they?
No, and it's not like when you start listing the owners, you're like, it's nice having those pockets behind you too. That I'm sure he's a fantastic trader, but it helps when you're getting the best stock in the world too. Yeah. And we know there's some great trainers out there, and you say, man, this one would be great. And then you see them get one of those really top horses and you go, oh, this one's showing that they can train as well. But sometimes it's a combination of the stock, the talent, the know-how, the skill, and then all that bubbles up and you become what Chad's become.
Yeah, he's a true force, and we wish him luck, and we thank him for coming on. Guys, next Thursday night, for everyone real quick on the bottom of the screen, 8 p.m. Eastern, a quick Mike Joyce from FanDuel, who Brittany Urton brought up, will make an appearance, but we're also going to be talking about Del Mar and Aqueduct Stakes. We're not going to talk about a pick 5. We're just going to talk about a bunch of stake races and preview them. So check that out on Thursday, and then we're live this Saturday. It's going to be about 1:30, about 2:30 Eastern time. We have to see what the times of the races are, but we'll be on live to talk about Cigar Mile Day in New York. For our referee friend who has left the show, Paul Halloran, and my wonderful also co-host and contributors, Pete Visco and Kyle Roscoe. This has been Howard Kravitz, episode 209. What a memorable HHH Racing podcast show with Brittany Urton and Chad Brown. Have a fantastic night, everyone, and we'll see you hopefully this Thursday night and this Saturday afternoon. Take care, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.